The X Zone Radio Show is heard on radio broadcast affiliates worldwide, including
AM 580 CFRA in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
WPUL AM 1590 in Daytona Beach, Florida.
KOHI AM 1610 in St. Helens, Oregon.
KHRO AM 1150 in El Paso, Texas. And for more information on becoming a professional broadcast affiliate of the X Zone Radio Show, visit
www.xzbn.net
or call toll-free worldwide
1-800-610-7035.
The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Close your eyes, give me your hand, darling. Do you feel my heart beating? Do you understand? Do you feel the same? Am I only dreaming? Is this burning an eternal flame? I believe it's meant to be, darling. I watch you when you are sleeping. You belong with me. Do you feel the same? Am I only dreaming? Or is this burning an eternal flame? Say my name, sunshine.
And welcome back, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone Radio Show on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and Ustream. Toll free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour, Exonation, is Dr. David E. Guggenheim. He is a marine scientist, conservation policy specialist, submarine pilot, and ocean explorer. He is president of One Planet, One Ocean, a project of the Ocean Foundation where he is a senior fellow and director of its Cuba Marine Research and Conservation Program. He is currently leading a major project to elevate collaboration in marine science and conservation among Cuba, Mexico, and the U.S. to a new level, and leading the first ever comprehensive research and conservation program in Cuba's Gulf of Mexico region, a joint effort with the University of Havana. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Guggenheim. And Dr. Guggenheim, welcome to the X Zone, sir. Great pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks so much for having me.
Doctor, the big news undoubtedly around the Gulf of Mexico, throughout the United States, Canada, and Central America is the disaster, the catastrophe that is happening to the waters because of the BP oil fiasco. And tell me, sir, since you're involved in that specific area of the oceanographic areas, tell me how you feel. Tell me how you really feel.
I feel the same way that your listeners feel, I'm sure. I feel terrible. I feel that this is something that not only affects an amazing ecosystem, but it affects me personally. we're all connected to the oceans, even if we live far inland. The oceans help us breathe every day of our lives and give us food, and they're just an incredibly important resource. I've spent most of my career trying to protect one part or another of the Gulf of Mexico. I've spent a lot of time in Florida. I've worked in Mexico, and as you mentioned, I've been working in Cuba the last 10 years. And the thing that I found about the Gulf of Mexico is that it is far more vibrant than even I could have imagined. And that makes the tragedy that much worse, because it's not a brown, muddy cauldron where hurricanes come from. It's much more. I've seen some of the bluest, clearest water I've ever seen anywhere in the world in the Gulf of Mexico, and coral reefs, whales, dolphins, birds. That just, to me, is it makes it that much more of a tragedy.
Doctor, please stand by. We have to take a commercial break. Exonation, our very special guest this hour is Dr. David Guggenheim. www.ocean.org. That's oneplanetoneocean.org. We'll be back. You don't want to miss this hour.
Is this burning?
Exonation, Dr. David Guggenheim is our special guest. www.oneplanetoneocean.org. That's the number one, then the word planet, number one, ocean.org. Also known as the Ocean Doctor and host of Expedition Cast podcast series, Dr. Guggenheim is currently engaged in a special expedition to all 50 states, visiting schools and bringing special programs about the ocean exploration and conservation to young students. So far, he has traveled more than 35,000 miles, visited 13 states, made 39 speeches, and reached more than 10,000 students in schools ranging from the northernmost community in North America, Barrow, Alaska, to Maxville, Kansas, close to the geographic center of the lower 48 states to the southern tip of Florida. Once again, www.oneplanetoneocean.org. You know, Doctor, we see the images of oil-covered birds and other wildlife, but there are many impacts of this massive oil spill we're probably not seeing. What can you tell us about what this oil spill is to the Gulf, and will it recover?
Well, the problem is that as heartbreaking as these images are of all of these birds and dolphins that we can see, there's so much more that we just can't see. This is an oil spill that is impacting every part of the spectrum in the food chain, in that whole ecosystem fabric. And we are especially concerned about the use of dispersant, because it doesn't make the oil disappear. It's not vanishing cream. It just turns it into smaller droplets, which then move further downstream and stay deep in the water, where they can infiltrate the food chain either in the deep water corals, in the deep water critters that live in the bottom, or in the microscopic plankton that float in the water column. So we may be looking at a problem that is spread out over thousands of square miles and lasts for generations. The question of recovery, I mean, we've seen nature do some remarkable things. Mother Nature is remarkably resilient, and we do hope that she can bounce back once again. But the problem is the Gulf already had a lot of problems going into this, and One of those problems has been overfishing, another being a dead zone the size of the state of New Jersey due to nutrient pollution coming down the Mississippi, along with many other things. So there's concern that maybe the system just isn't as resilient as it needs to be to recover from something that is still growing in magnitude.
What happens to a lot of the species that were endangered or still are endangered in the Gulf of Mexico? How is the damage, the pollution that is going on in the thousands of barrels each and every day going to affect the survival of certain species?
Well, the impact to species like pelicans is pretty obvious. Now, the brown pelican is an icon of a great success story. We protected the brown pelican, which was highly endangered back in the 60s due to DDT, and it's made a wonderful recovery all throughout the Gulf of Mexico. But you can see what happens when a pelican does what it needs to do for a living, diving into the water. When that water is covered with oil, it puts itself in a very, very risky situation, and many of them die. But the other critters that are at risk in the Gulf of Mexico, many of them are fish and invertebrates, corals, for example. We've already lost worldwide about 25% of the world's corals. And in the Florida Keys, for example, we've lost almost 50% of those corals. Coral is an animal. It has to make a living too. It eats plankton and uses photosynthesis. And the problem is this oil can enter the food chain at just about any level. And as these organisms concentrate that in the food chain, the toxicity of that chemical, of the harmful chemicals within the oil, concentrate, bioaccumulate in the tissue, and they biomagnify, which means the concentration grows every time something eats something smaller than it. So that's why I express concern about the fact that this could be a problem we see for generations.
Now, you've described this as an international incident and have expressed concern about the oil reaching areas hundreds or thousands of miles downstream, including Cuba. Is this still a threat?
Yes, in fact, earlier today, NOAA has released, NOAA being the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they've released their latest models that are projecting where this oil is likely to go. Now, the problem with the model is only looking at, it's primarily looking at surface oil, and it's not really taking into account the use of those dispersants. So there's a huge unknown associated with this. But that being as it may, if you look at the models and where this oil is likely to go, it will eventually get caught up into the loop current, and that loop current takes the water and anything floating in it, such as oil, south toward the northwestern coast of Cuba before making a major turn to the east, up through the Florida Keys, the east coast of Florida, including Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and that area, before heading offshore into what becomes the current that heads over to Europe and the Gulf Stream. But along the way, there is likely to be significant impact because all of that oil is, as I said before, is not magically disappearing. They're only able to capture a small amount of it, and that oil is of great concern. My work has been primarily in Cuba over the last 10 years, and the thing about Cuba is that it's like a time machine. It's like going back 500 years to see what Christopher Columbus saw. I was absolutely shocked to see healthy corals, the healthiest marine ecosystems I've seen anywhere. And the hope is to learn from those and learn from those about what Cuba's doing right or what's unique about its situation so we can restore corals in our own backyard and around the world. Wouldn't it be tragic if we lost those corals due to this oil spill?
It certainly would. We've also heard stories about enormous quantities of methane gas being released along with the oil. Why is this of concern? Wouldn't the methane gas just float to the top of the ocean and disperse in the air?
Indeed, a lot of the methane does do just that. It bubbles to the surface, as you might expect. But along the journey from a mile down, a lot of that gas dissolves into the water column. And apparently, there is a significant amount of gas. Normally, you get about a 5% fraction of the blowout, including natural gas. Here, I've heard estimates as high as 40% of what's coming out as natural gas. It's very highly concentrated. It's a carbon compound, which means it's an organic material, and it's food for hungry bacteria, which is good news because there are bacteria in the water column that are eager to eat all that stuff up along with oil. Mm-hmm. The problem is when they munch on that gas and on the oil, that's a process that uses oxygen, and it takes oxygen out of the water column and robs the oxygen from other creatures that need it, and especially creatures like fish, which have gills and breathe oxygen through their gills from the water. And as a result, you have conditions already. Scientists have measured background concentrations of methane 10,000 times higher than normal, and oxygen levels in these areas have dropped to less than 25% of what's normal. And as if that weren't bad enough, there's already an area of low oxygen, this dead zone that I mentioned earlier. This is a dead zone, and it's caused by the same thing. It's all of this nutrient pollution, fertilizers coming from 38 of the U.S. states, 2 Canadian provinces. 40% of the continental U.S. drains into the Mississippi, and that's a lot of nutrients and fertilizer, and those fertilizers do exactly the same thing in the Gulf of Mexico that they do on the farms and in your backyard. They make plants grow. In the water, they make algae grow. When that algae dies, it's the same situation as oil and gas. The bacteria go to work on it, and that robs the water column of oxygen. It's the second largest dead zone in the world, second only to one in the Baltic Sea, where really nothing can live.
Unbelievable. What is with all the bacteria growing, what's the ultimate, what's the worst that can happen?
Well, the worst that can happen is, I'm afraid, is already starting to happen, and we're seeing the size of that dead zone continue to grow. And, a lot of well-meaning folks have suggested, why don't we use these naturally occurring bacteria to get rid of the oil? Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense, but it comes at a cost, and that's the problem of oxygen. Now, there's some other folks who've suggested, why don't we put bubble curtains in the water? That would serve a number of purposes. It would oxygenate the water and therefore help keep the oxygen levels up. It might help prevent wildlife from going in the wrong direction, and it might actually create a physical barrier to keep oil from coming on shore. And I hear they're actually going to try this out in, I believe it's Destin, Florida, as a test case, and I think it's great. The one, if you've got to look on the bright side in a disaster like this, and the one thing that I find heartening is that it's pulling us all together to think about solutions, to think about how much we treasure these ecosystems, how much they really mean to us, and it's increasing awareness. But the way the community is pulling together, I think, is very admirable.
Doctor, please stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Dr. David Guggenheim is our special guest. OnePlanet.OneOcean.org. I'll be back with the good doctor on the other side of this news break. Don't go away. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio,
Euro High Definition Radio,
and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035.
Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com.
On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com,
And our website,
www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Why do I feel like I'm losing control? On this useless night, with you so far away, I stand in front of this Ferris wheel and I wonder, what am I doing here? And I wonder, what am I doing here? And all the drunks just stumble by and mumble their abuse.
And welcome back, everyone. Dr. David Guggenheim is our special guest. www.oneplanetoneocean.org. Doctor, when you're out talking to the kids in the schools on this wonderful project you're on, what kind of questions do they ask you, and how do they react to what's going on in the Gulf?
Boy, I get some great questions. In fact, I had a fourth grade class in Virginia submit 10 really creative ideas for dealing with the oil spill. And I'm just delighted that they are fully engaged in this issue. This is a life learning issue for them. It's about something that is part of their future. Unfortunately, it's a problem that they will inherit. Kids are very creative. Well, one of the questions I get a lot of questions about sharks, and it's the 35th anniversary of the movie Jaws, and my message to them, I'm surprised kids are terrified of sharks, really terrified of sharks, and I think it's a product of Shark Week and other sort of sensational TV that I know that these kids watch. And unfortunately, they're not getting the message that humans are a much greater threat to sharks than sharks are to humans. We've managed to kill about 90% of the world's sharks over the last 50 years. And you're about 300 times more likely to be killed by a deer than you are by a shark, because we drive down the road and we run into deer, and that can be a fatal encounter, unfortunately. So part of it is undoing some of the myths and some of the fear of the oceans. I also get a lot of questions about the submarine. I pilot a small one-person submersible, and what I realize is kids are really curious, but they don't realize there's a sense that we've already explored everything, and they are absolutely shocked when I say, you know what, we've only explored 5% of the world's oceans. We've been busy in outer space. We know more about the backside of the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean. And I say, don't ever let anybody tell you that there's nothing left to explore, because you guys are the ones that are going to have to work on that other 95%. There's a lot out there to explore. And then in the same breath, I usually get a question of do I get to eat snacks when I'm in the sub? Because they can't imagine that I'm away from food for 4 to 6 hours. And I think we have a bit of a snack-obsessed younger generation right now. But, I take that in stride. I think it's a fair question. But I'm very inspired by these kids. There's a great love of the oceans, even in the states where I'm visiting kids, and where half the kids have never even seen an ocean. They're already in love with it, and all we need to do is take advantage of that and really get them, continue to spark their interest, give them opportunities to learn more about it.
Now, how deep does your sub actually go, Doctor? And what's the deepest you've gone in your submersible?
I've gone to about 2,000 feet, which is the limit of this particular sub. These are built in Vancouver, up in British Columbia, by a company called Nutco, and they are the smallest submarines. It's a one-person submersible called the Deep Worker. It flies completely independently. There's no tether to the surface. You are always at 1 atmosphere of pressure, meaning it's the same pressure you would feel in your living room. So you don't have any of the problems with pressure that a scuba diver would. So you can go up and down. You don't feel your ears pop. You don't have to decompress. And you've got enough battery power to last, as I say, the average dive 4 to 6 hours. But in an emergency, you can generate enough air supply to stay down for 80 hours, more than 3 days, which is long enough to fly a rescue helicopter, a rescue sub in from anywhere in the world if that were necessary. But I feel very safe in these subs. I feel a lot safer than driving on the Washington, D.C. Beltway, I'll tell you that.
I've been there, I've driven it, and I understand exactly what you mean. Doctor, what do you think would happen if we were to spend all the resources that we spend, and I'm talking about worldwide, on space exploration and concentrate on the oceans?
There's an interesting question there, because it might have gone that way had it not been for the Cold War. Believe it or not, it was 50 years ago this year, we celebrated here in Washington 50 years ago that Don Walsh and French explorer Jacques Piccard made their historic dive in a bathyscaphe to the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean in the Mariana Trench, 7 miles down, which is like if you climbed Mount Everest, if you put Mount Everest at the bottom of that trench and climbed to the top, there would still be another mile of water on top of your head. That's how deep that is. They made this historic journey in 1960, and we've never been back. And there are no submarines in the world that can go even half of that depth today. And it really illustrates that we have focused our attentions elsewhere, and we associate exploration, the final frontier, with outer space. Now, space exploration, I've been a big fan of, and I would be careful about taking money away from the space program, but I sure would like to see it more in balance, because there are so many mysteries. Yeah. Every expedition I've been on, including in the Gulf of Mexico, we've pulled up new species, things that no human eyes have ever seen before. And I worry that with this oil spill, these animals will be gone before we can ever even discover them.
It must, when you're down in your submersible, have you come across any life form that has never been seen before?
Several times. In the Bering Sea, I was on an expedition actually along with Greenpeace. It was a partnership of Greenpeace and NOAA, an interesting partnership on the Greenpeace ship Esperanza, looking at deep sea corals. And these are corals. We usually associate corals with the tropics, but corals grow all over the world, and even in cold water. They are the oldest living animals on the planet. They can live up to 4,000 years old, and it's an amazing sight to get down to 2,000 feet and see these beautiful, they look like little trees of pink and orange and various colors, all over the place. You know, it makes you really appreciate that even in the darkest corners in the cold water, that life can flourish. The problem up there is that we see trawlers going through, dragging the bottom. It's essentially strip mining the bottom and killing those corals in the blink of an eye, what may have taken centuries to grow. But during that expedition, we found a new species of sponge, which is a colonial animal that we associate with doing the dishes, but it's a very important animal to that ecosystem. And we found corals that had never been documented in the Bering Sea before, and so that was very exciting. In the Gulf of Mexico, about 5 years ago, we found a giant nudibranch. It's the size of a dinner plate, and a nudibranch is essentially a sea slug. It's a giant snail with no shell, and it was purple. It was this big purple blob, and then we realized, hey, that thing has antennae. It's got two little antennae, and everybody's scratching their head saying, never saw it before. So, it's what keeps you young. I mean, and it also, I've always said that exploration and conservation go hand in hand, because the more you explore and the more you find, the more you realize that so much is at risk if we don't take care of it. So much of the deep that we thought was dead is thriving with life.
Something I read where you said, where you actually did a blog, and it's entitled, "Want to Help the Gulf Kill Your Lawn." What's that about?
Well, it's a bit of a provocative title, but when you look at this giant dead zone, well, let me back up and just say that I talk to a lot of people, and there's an amazing amount of frustration. We're all watching this leak day after day. This plume of oil erupting into the Gulf, and we feel helpless. We feel like there's nothing we can do about it. Some people have donated hair, some people have donated money, but I was thinking about the fact that here we've got this enormous dead zone that's getting larger, and we've got 38 U.S. states and a bit of Saskatchewan and Alberta also, connected directly to the Gulf of Mexico, along with the Gulf states themselves. And most of these homes in those areas have lawns, because back in the 1800s, we became infatuated with what was going on in Europe and in England, and everybody had lawns, and there was this sense that we all needed to outcompete our neighbors and have the greenest lawn on the block. But we're using so much fertilizer and water, and all of that ends up in our water bodies, and much of it ends up in the Gulf and is contributing to the problem. So I was using the example of a wonderful program in Florida called the Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Program, which is working in conjunction with the government, and it's donating to citizens free information and free training on how to replant your lawn with native vegetation, which the beauty is you don't have to water or fertilize it because it's native. It's already used to living there. It's an ideal solution, and it actually attracts wildlife. And imagine if many of us did this, it would really make a difference. And it's one thing we can literally do in our own backyards that can help the Gulf of Mexico.
Exonation, our special guest this hour is Dr. David Guggenheim, and his website is www.oneplanetoneocean.org. If the President of the United States was to call you up, Doctor, and say, "Dr. David, I'm putting you in charge of the cleanup of the Gulf of Mexico because of your qualifications," what would you do? How would you handle that task?
Well, that would be a scary phone call because that's a huge responsibility. But I'll tell you, the first thing I would do would be to stop using these dispersants. I think that is a huge mistake. The problem is it's an uncontrolled experiment. It's never been done before. We've never applied dispersants at depth. And I am very concerned that we are simply displacing the problem. We may be keeping a little more oil off some of the beaches, but we're sending it further south and into many other different kinds of ecosystems as a consequence. The other thing that I would do is I would certainly ramp up the efforts. It seems that we have a huge number of people with vessels, with two hands, with big hearts, who want to help, but there's nothing to really, latch onto for these folks. There's no place to go, no place to sign up. There's a few conservation organizations doing great work. There's a Vessel of Opportunity program that NOAA has, which is great, but I think that we could kick that up a notch and really harness the passion and the volunteerism that exists in this country to get things done.
I agree. Doctor, please stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation, it's been a great hour with our guest this hour, Dr. David Guggenheim. www.oneplanetoneocean.org. That's the number 1, then planet, the number 1, ocean.org. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Once again, for more information on Dr. David Guggenheim, www.oneplanetoneocean.org. Don't go away.
Just stumble by and mumble their abuse. Tell me what is the use, and I wonder what am I doing here.
Don't know when I've been so blue. Don't know what's come over you. You found someone new, and don't it make my brown eyes blue? I'll be fine when you're gone. I'll just cry all night long. Say it is untrue, and don't it make my brown eyes blue? Tell me no secrets, tell me some lies.
Exonation, Dr. David Guggenheim is our special guest. OnePlanet, What about the seafood in the Gulf, Doctor? Is it safe?
Well, at this point, the authorities have closed down a significant portion of the Gulf to fishing because it's believed that those fish are toxic,
right.
And shellfish. That's about a third of the fishing areas. But again, this is a long-term issue. And even if the government declares seafood safe to eat, I'm afraid that, the consumers are a fickle bunch and easily scared off. This could have long-term implications for the Gulf of Mexico and its fishing industry. One of the things I've proposed is that we take a look at the newest technology for growing fish on land as a way to help that industry recover and create an adjunct that is sustainable. These are systems that are used in Europe and in Asia and Australia, not so much in the Americas yet, but think of it as a large water treatment facility with a fish tank. It recirculates 99% of its water, no chemicals or antibiotics, and no discharge, and they can be put inland, close to where the fish is going to be consumed. And I've seen these systems as small as little backyard systems and as large. In Denmark, I saw one that was 1,000 tons per year, supplying 20% of the eel to the European market. They really love eel over there.
I don't know why.
It's a festive fish around the holidays instead of eating turkey, they eat eel.
Or like they do now in I think, where is it, Oregon, where they're killing off the Canadian geese. Anyway, that's another.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, there's a park in Oregon in one of the cities. I forget which one it is. That there's so many Canadian geese that are defecating on their parks. They killed 150 of them, I believe, and they gave the meat to the homeless.
Oh, how about that? Well, I'm
sorry, didn't mean to get you off track.
No. I'm gonna. What I was going to mention is that just recently I've been spending time in Vancouver, and the British Columbian government and local business community and the seafood industry have all gotten together to address the fact that there are opportunities to grow salmon on land.
Yeah.
And keep that region in the salmon business, and I think that's a great model for the Gulf of Mexico. So what I'm hoping to do in the next few weeks is to have a strategic workshop in the Gulf region to kind of pull some bright minds together and look at this and see if we can't get that region to rebuild itself.
A whole new industry called fish farming. Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Great pleasure. Look forward to the next time you're here with us in the X Zone. And from the planet Earth to you, Doctor, thank you for all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Thanks so much.
My great pleasure, sir. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break at 6.5 minutes past as we continue right here in the X Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.